stories, and I have one that someone sent me that I want to be sure to tell you about, and then we'll visit and have some more, and then we do have to leave the building by 7:30.
Yes. We're doing good. Good evening.
Good evening.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, go far.
Great. Okay.
Loudmouth.
Yes. Before we start this evening's presentation, I'd like to thank Charles Hutchins for his invaluable help putting this program together for me. I really appreciate it, Charles. And I want to thank Paul German for furnishing the pictures that we're going to show you of the Mary Mansion as we take her through her journey through life. This afternoon's presentation is going to be a twofold purpose. First, of course, the story, the history of Mary Mansion, but it's also to pay tribute to the, author of this story. Charles?
That's the wrong one, Linda.
Huh?
The remote's needs right here.
Oh, okay, that's why it wouldn't work.
That's why it wouldn't work.
Okay,
That's the button.
thank you, dear. As I said, we're going to pay tribute to the author of this story. That's the Mary Mansion. The very talented, my friend, Dot Kennedy Miazza. Dot wrote this story for the Herald in January of 1970, months after the Mary Mansion was destroyed by Hurricane Camille. Dot is no longer with us, but tonight we are so pleased to have her daughter to represent her, my friend, Kennedy Miazza White. Thank you so much, Kennedy, for being here and acknowledging your mother's talent with us. A lovely lady. Thank you, Dot, for writing this. And so, this will be in Dot's words. We'll begin the villa that Piaggio built. This one's for you, Dot. When new arrivals on the Mississippi Gulf Coast drove along Highway 90 in Mississippi City and passed the large villa-type building facing the beach, they invariably asked the same question concerning its ancestry. This curiosity persisted until finally Hurricane Camille on August 18, 1969, destroyed what vandals in years of neglect had ingraciously left behind. The house was referred to as either the old Piaggio place or the Mary Mansion, depending on your date of arrival in the area. Piaggio was the man who built the house, and the Mary Mansion was the name selected when it became a nightclub for a short while during the 1940s. Fact or fable? The questions about the origin of the house has always been met with a multitude of answers, each given as though they were certain facts. The sketchy background usually included that the house was built by an Italian named Piaggio, a consulate in New Orleans, who perhaps had been too generous in availing himself of government funds, but had died before occupying the house. Some said the imposing place was built for his personal residence as a replica of his home in Italy. Others were certain it was built for a refuge for English or Italian, take your pick, should the First World War go badly for them. Then others felt his death was a rather mysterious affair. There were divergent views that he died of pneumonia, a heart attack, cancer, or that he was shot by the chauffeur. And he was either buried in Italy or New Orleans. The account which follows is constructed in the same manner as a map in Edgar Allan Poe's The Gold Bug. These are the facts that appear to be the nearest to the truth. Piaggio's background. On March 17, 1874, in Genoa, Italy, Henry Piaggio was born into a financially secure and socially prominent family. He came to Pensacola, Florida, when only a boy in his teens, to work in a sawmill his father owned and to learn his father's business, that of lumber exporting. During the Spanish-American War, he served in the United States Army, going into service from Pensacola. After his discharge, he came to Gulfport and opened a lumber exporting company called Henry Piaggio and Company. Returning to Europe for an extended visit, he met and married in London Margaret Muldowney from Mount Vernon, Ohio. They went to Russia for several months, but before returning to Gulfport, he was hired by the Italian government to manage the International Shipbuilding Company with yards in Pascagoula, same location as Ingalls is now, and Orange, Texas. At this time, he maintained his office where the Grider shoe store used to be. It is now located in Gulfport. At this time, the location was occupied by a one-story bank building, and Henry Piaggio had the second floor added to for his offices, which were paneled in fine imported woods. Construction of the villa. In 1919, he began the villa, which would not be completed at the time of his death in 1921. A house not made of stone, but of concrete block. Rudolph Seppage, who is from Mississippi City, and his brother Johnny used forms to make the blocks out of beach sand and imported cement from Belgium. Oscar Lyons, with a team of mules, would bring the sand to the building site, and the Seppage brothers would make the blocks. Piaggio at this time also bought the Arcadian Dairy, and the blocks were made there also. L.L. Chevali and Tom Furton were the contractors for the job. They used materials that were brought as ballast from Italian ships and carted in horse-drawn wagons to the construction site. The garden fountain arrived in the same manner. Each of the 15 rooms in the mansion were furnished in different wood, such as mahogany and walnut. The imported marble bathtub was 7 feet long and had 5 or 6 shower heads in the walls at varying heights. Work was slow because Piaggio was exacting, and the final cost of the house turned out to be $200,000. A lot of money in those days. Apparently also he was an automobile fancier. He owned the first Stanley steamer in town, complete with chauffeur, later trading in the car for a Ross. He followed it with an Apperson Jackrabbit. Does anyone know what an Apperson Jackrabbit is? Okay. Recollections. Those who worked for Piaggio in the International Shipbuilding Company remember him as a pleasant, generous man. Gordon Rowland recalls that Piaggio gave him a month's salary at Christmas after only working for the company for 3 months. D. Kemp McInnes, whose father Roy managed the shipyard in Orange, Texas, said that Piaggio insisted that his father take his family with him on business trips to New York. The purpose of the shipyard was to bring wooden boats that would make 2 trips to Europe with supplies such as naval stores, and then the boat itself would be scrapped in Italy for the wood, which was in short supply there. Approximately 7 ships were built in Orange, Texas. In addition to this company, Piaggio was also president of the Piaggio Commercial Corporation and H. Piaggio Exporting Company. A family argument. During the First World War, Henry Piaggio's father came to Gulfport to see E.P. Holmes of the Holmes Hendrick Lumber Company about closing their general office, which the senior Piaggio managed for them. After their business meeting, Mr. Holmes explained that Henry Piaggio's office was only a block away But Mr. Piaggio replied that as far as he was concerned, his son was dead. So something went very, very wrong. Piaggio was not only a man with several business interests, he led an active social life. Described as a handsome man with dark eyes and hair, he made friends easily, but his wife was more retiring. Few people who were able to maintain a prolonged friendship with her. He owned a private railroad car, which he used to take friends to Orange, Texas, for visits of several days. And there, they were entertained by several wealthy families in the town in a grand manner. And something has, Charles, your battery is low, dear.
I knew it was gonna happen.
Okay,
It was fully charged. It just,
okay. Technical difficulty, it happens to the best of us. And we don't have to reboot this, do we?
no.
Thank God. Okay. There was never any formal charges, excuse me, after the World War ended, the Italian government stopped financing the shipbuilding business, and several other business families, dealings went badly for Piaggio. So by 1921, he was bankrupt. There was never any formal charges brought against him for the mishandling of funds, and he continued working for the Italian government for as long as they operated the shipyards. He certainly lived in a grand manner, with Mrs. Piaggio owning a rather extensive jewelry collection. However, these pieces were eventually sold before he died. Piaggio's death. In September of 1921, he became ill, and 3 months later, on December 19th, he died in the cottage, never to live in the mansion, which was then almost completed but only partially furnished. According to his obituary in the Daily Herald, his pallbearers were Mr. Staples of Mobile, A.F. Danzler, Charles Patterson, Colonel J.W. Apperson, Judge George N. Dodds. He was survived by his wife, and then in Italy, his mother, a sister, and brother, and here in the United States, Mrs. John Ryan of Mobile. And I have a little footnote there. The Ryan family started a lumber business back in the 1850s, 1860s in Hansburg, and then they relocated into Mobile, and so it seems like his sister married into lumber also. Piaggio is buried in Evergreen Cemetery in Gulfport. Over the next 25 years, Mrs. Piaggio gradually sold the pieces of furniture and would periodically take tourists through the house for a small charge, asking them not to touch the tattered lace curtains still hanging in the windows. On occasion, she would allude to passageways beneath the mansion containing valuable items, unfortunately only products of her imagination. She died in the late 1940s in a nursing home here on the coast. Also in the 1940s, the mansion was bought by Salvador Pertusi for a short while and became the Merry Mansion. The name, however, was a misnomer. The house, for all its grandeur, seemed always to be displaced. Perhaps on a sunny hill in Genoa, it could have been the home Henry Piaggio wanted. The Sunday Herald, January 18th, 1970. Thank you, Doc, so much. And now I'm going to tell the rest of the story of the Merry Mansion. It became the Embassy Club in the 1920s after Piaggio died. Evidently, Ms. Piaggio made an arrangement, at least rented the building to this Embassy Club that catered to officers at Keesler Field. And there was dinner and cocktails, and here it shows, there it is in all its glory, landscape, beautifully, and I imagine everyone had a very good time there because, of course, there's another shot of it. Very lovely. How many remember the Mary Mansion? Yeah. Yeah, I grew up not far from there. If anyone would like, I can leave this on later, longer. The prices are fantastic. You can really have a good time, and you'll find some drinks that, you know, the gin rickeys. Whoever had gin rickeys? My mother loved gin rickeys, you know. She was the only one I knew that liked them. Of course, the bonded Canadian whiskeys and the scotches and rums, and the next page of this, and the punches and the gin fizzes. But it's amusing if you look at the top. On weekdays, there's a minimum of $1. You had to spend $1 there, and on Sundays and holidays, $1.50. And there is a menu from the Mary Mansion, the fun center of the Deep South. 3.5 miles east of Gulfport, to be exact. Now, this is a picture, as you say, courtesy of the Civil Defense. Right after the '47 hurricane, there's a barge, you can detect it, it hit the Mary Mansion, and I understand a lady was killed. She had sought refuge there. She lived in a little cottage not far from there and went into the main building but lost her life in the '47 hurricane. And the Patusis, after the '47 hurricane, it was never really used. The Patusi family hired caretakers that lived inside. They evidently had an apartment fixed for them. And one family in the 1950s, when I was going to Mississippi City School, the Bolins, Johnny Bolin, was a few grades ahead of me, and he met and fell in love with Judy Ingracia, who's the granddaughter of Salvador Patusi, and they're still married, and they're grandparents and great-grandparents, and it's a really good story of the connection between the Patusis and the Ingracias. And this is the ruins after Camille. This is what happened to the poor, dear building. Had so much potential, but never really got the full impact of how it could be. I had a friend, Jay and Thelma Cullinane, that lived on Laurel, which just kind of runs perpendicular to the property, and they stayed in their house for Camille, and said they called them boulders from the Mary Mansion were just flying through the air and didn't hit their house, but hit many houses and in the yards, and it was quite a thing to go through to see the house being torn apart. And I thank you for your time, and it was a delight to see everybody, and I hope everyone enjoyed it, and I have to thank God again for her lovely words.
I started the conversation about the Mary Mansion because I'm sure y'all have some things to share and maybe some answers to some questions.
Yeah.
One of our members who called, or new interested member, who called and wasn't able to be here tonight because he